Thank you very much, and apologies for also being another man. It's a great pity that Carmel Nolan can't be here today because she's a great speaker and a really important female voice from the trade union movement. So hopefully you will get to hear her at some point. So I run Labour for a People's Vote, and we do what it says on the tin. We are Labour Party, and we are campaigning for a public vote on Brexit so that we can hopefully end up staying in the European Union. And you'll be aware that we feel like we've had quite a success this week with the shift in Labour Party policy. But nevertheless, our work continues because we need to make sure the leadership do what they've now committed publicly to do. And then there's also the fact that we've still got about 40 Labour MPs who we think could possibly vote for Theresa May still, or would vote in a vote against a People's Vote in Parliament. So if you have a Labour Party MP, please go home and when you leave here, get in touch with your Labour Party MP and make sure that they know what you think and what you want them to do if you're in favour of a second referendum. But to my speech today anyway, so for now, I think in terms of stopping democracy from having a downfall, and in terms of resurrecting Europe and a hopeful future for the UK and for Europe, certainly my view, like Nick, is that the focus now has to be on Brexit and getting that right. It is the greatest threat to livelihoods, to rights, to protections, to living standards, and to our democracy in my lifetime. And just as Nick said, it is for many on the right their opportunity to complete the Thatcher project, and the consequences that would have for the vast majority of people in the UK are incalculable. You know, what they would want to do for our country, do to our country would be awful. But Brexit is part of a bigger picture, and I think once Brexit is stopped, those of us who want to see, a liberal, hopeful future in which the ordinary man and woman has rights and protections and a decent job to go to and decent housing, that job continues. And the job of making sure that our governance in the future is not led by populists and demagogues continues. And currently we're working on the British expression of that, which is Brexit. But of course, we're well aware that elsewhere in the world, we've got Donald Trump, we've got Orban, we've got Erdogan in Turkey, we've got Bolsonaro in Brazil. This struggle continues because this is happening on a global level. And once we've got things in place here, we will then need to solidify that and then make sure that we're doing what we need to do in the rest of the world. On that note, this morning I was sent a long and forensic account of how Brexit is the result of the decades of manoeuvring by corporate elites to negotiate an opt-out for Britain from the social and workers' rights of the European Union. Their original plan was to keep us in the economic element, in the single market, but gain us an opt-out on all the social rights and protections. So essentially, the argument of this piece was that it's backfired for them, because if Brexit goes through, we're all going to end up poorer, even the rich, which is why they're shifting their operations to Ireland, to France, and to wherever else. So essentially, they've ended up doing something they didn't intend to do and want to do, but as a result, we're going to bear the brunt of that, of course, because we can't just stop six and move our operations to Ireland or to France, because we live here, and our families are here, and our homes are here. But, some of them were able to do that. What they've done is create and unleash a dynamic that they couldn't control for one reason and another. And populism, of which Brexit, as I've said, is the UK representation, has taken root across much of the developed world. Now, I think it's worth us looking at some of the causes of that. Now, of course, we could go on all day about what the causes are, but I think there are a few that it's worth looking at as we think about how to fix this, because this hasn't come out of nowhere. My own summary, very simplistically, probably, is that it's down to insecurity. The economic insecurity that followed the financial crisis. I don't know what you feel like, but for me, that moment and that image still of people queuing around the block, when Northern Rock collapsed, I think that put fear into the hearts of so many people in the UK, because we weren't used to that. That hadn't happened for decades. And I still feel like somehow we're still in a bit of a crisis. One of the ways that I think that's true is that, and I don't know if this is true, but it's certainly my perception, is that before the financial crisis, we were a much more outward-looking nation. When you watch the 6 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news or listen to the Today programme, there was much more discussion of what was going on in Europe, what was going on in America, what was going on in the developing world. Whereas I feel like for the last 10, 11 years, we've been so much more myopically focused on our own country, because I think it just generated this sense of panic and things aren't all right. And I really don't feel like we've come out of that place yet. There's the insecurity we all feel as the climate crisis worsens and our political leaders fail to tackle it. I learned this week that we're burning 80% more coal now than we were in the year 2000. So much as we might talk about the fact that we are, the Paris Agreement and we're fixing climate change, we're not doing anything of the sort. We're continuing to burn as much carbon as we can get our hands on. Trump has just appointed a former coal lobbyist to run the Environmental Protection Agency, which it does terrify all of us, hence our insecurity and our fear. My regional organiser in Yorkshire and Humber on Wednesday went across to Grimsby to campaign towards trying to get Melanie on support a People's Vote. And he texted me later in the day, said, I'm in Grimsby, it's February, people are sunbathing on the beach. And that, again, I'm sure it's very nice for the people sunbathing on the beach, but that ought to be terrifying for all of us. Hence people's insecurity. We're right to be scared, basically. And then thirdly, migration. And I think we're all aware that the so-called refugee crisis of 2016 scared a lot of people in this country, actually. And I think it was one driver of the Leave vote in 2016. Because I think people understand that in the end, if these people want to come en masse, we can't in the end stop them coming. And also because they know that, somehow they know, a lot of people know that if we try and stop them coming, if we let them die in those boats, if we end up putting walls up like Trump wants to, if we end up turning guns on these people, none of which is impossible, might I add, then who are we? We cease to be ourselves, and this is no longer the Europe that we want and that we want ourselves to be. And I think it's true that Western and non-Western democracies have struggled to cope, with these three crises, but also with a host of others. In the UK, we haven't had a proper parliamentary majority since 2005, which is 14 years ago. So it's no secret that our democracy is in crisis. The US elected Trump. Congress and the Senate are absolutely divided, and the two sides won't talk to one another. Populist parties across Europe are on the rise, and some sane politicians like Merkel, are on the wane. And there won't always be a Macron to save us from a Le Pen. Poland, Hungary, Brazil are in the grip of thugs. So it's not cheerful. But we'll move on to something that's a bit more cheerful. But let's think about why that is. Is it our leaders? Were Brown, Cameron and May so awful that people looked at the extremes and thought, well, we're going to go for that? Or like May, she's effectively become one of those extremes. Are our politicians cowards, afraid of presenting real choices and truth to their voters? Are our systems at fault? Do we need to do something different? Are we falling prey to the right-wing press, to coal lobbyists, or to Russian Facebook posts? Probably. Have we forever lost the ability to present a reasoned argument to our countries and our voters that explains challenges and articulates a realistic way out? I hope not. I don't think this is beyond us. Much as the challenges we face are huge, I don't think this is beyond us, just as huge crises weren't beyond our politicians and our leaders in the past. I think we can have hope, and I think we can find ways to articulate and offer that hope to the country and to the electorate. We have assets. I think we have an increasingly good understanding of the causes of discontent. I think that the insecurity and the poverty and the lack of wage rises and the anger that people feel over our refusing to listen to their concerns, I think that understanding has grown very much, in part actually driven by the Leave votes, because I think that shocked a lot of people into thinking, well, we can't actually carry on with business as usual. I think we've got a shared belief, actually, with the discontented people or with the angry people, that we can't go back. We can't go back to 1997 or 2007 or 2016. We have to go forward to a new settlement. So we have to put the work in to work out what that new settlement is. And happily, the populists have got a big problem. New political movements tend to last about 30 years. So the post-war settlement lasted about 30 years, and neoliberalism up until the financial crisis lasted about 30 years. But for populism to last 30 years, they don't just need electoral success, they also need results in the real world. Basically, people's lives have to get better because Trump is in power, or because Brexit happens, or because Orban is in power, or Erdogan. And that isn't happening. They're not doing anything. Trump isn't getting loads of jobs back, and he hasn't built a wall. Brexit hasn't suddenly made loads of people richer and all the migrants go away. Bluntly, people's lives have to get better, but they're not. So for the populists to have won the White House and a referendum and to be in power in a few countries doesn't mean that they're going to be around for the next 30 years and that we're going to be on the back foot. But despite the talk and the priorities, the fact that they've achieved nothing is probably our biggest benefit right now. So we need to hope that trend continues. But the challenge, and our challenge, therefore, is to put together a political programme that addresses people's fears of unchecked migration, of climate chaos, of joblessness, of wage stagnation, of loss of cultural identity, and that also is an agenda that offers hope, not only that we can face these challenges, but that we can overcome them. And that our best days can lie ahead and not behind. And I think most people have stopped believing that. We need clear, tangible, achievable goals and plans. We need the right leaders and the right message carriers. We may well need to look at our structures and reform them. We might well need more devolution in the UK. We might well need a written constitution, realignment of the main parties, proportional representation. All of these options should be considered. But first and foremost, we have to stay in Europe. Europe should be the hope for our country, or one hope for our country, and the fact that it's been derided as the opposite of that for so long should shame us all, actually, because for too long we've had politicians that they've been happy to blame Brussels when things have been going wrong, even if they've been Remainers at heart. If we let Brexit happen, we let the far right win. We will spend the next 10 plus years in negotiating trade deals with the European Union and with others, and the economy will crash. We know what happens when things get worse economically. People don't come together to the political centre, they go off to one or other of the extremes. And that, I think, has already happened since 2008, but it will happen even more if Brexit goes through and people become poorer. So ending Brexit, for me, it's one stage in a longer fight, but it is that first essential battle that we have to win. Thank you.